Just Here in the Dark podcast with me, your host, Sean, on today's Weird Wednesday. As always, you can check out the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio is pending as of now, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Also, you can check out short, strange stories on my Instagram page, which is Just Here in the Dark on Instagram. And I try to put out at least three of those a week, including other content. So please check it out. Please support, like, share, engage. But without further ado, let's get into our stories. This first story comes to us from MSN.com. One day into an expedition on the mountains of northern Russia, an avid skier and student at the Ural Polytech Institute felt a pain in his lower back. His sciatic nerve had flared up, and it forced him to leave his group and turn around. The decision saved his life. The 9 remaining members of the expedition continued hiking and cross-country skiing towards the mountain. Then, on February 1st, 1959, 5 days after Yudin left, they all died mysteriously. Rescuers found the group's large tent, which had been cut open from the inside, nearly 4 weeks later. The bodies were discovered up to a mile away, down the mountain, some clad in only socks and underwear. Something had caused the hikers to flee shoeless from their tent in temperatures of minus 13 degrees Fahrenheit. The hikers' immediate causes of death were eventually determined. 6 died of hypothermia and 3 from blunt force trauma to their chest and head. But the cause of the disaster remained a mystery. The hikers had set up a camp on the slopes of, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this place out of all due respect. It is a KH, then the next word has a KHL. I don't even know where to start when pronouncing that, so alright. But that name translates into Dead Mountain. They were 12 miles south of their intended destination on the mountain. A photograph recovered from a camera found around the neck of one of the hikers suggests the group pitched camp and ate dinner together on the evening of February 1st, 1959. Forensic evidence supports that timeline. After the bodies were found, a 3-month government investigation determined that a, quote, compelling natural force had caused the hikers' death, but it didn't explain what that force was. Their families were left without answers. Since then, conspiracy theories have run a gamut from a Yeti attack to a run-in with aliens. This next article comes to us from grunge.com.
Grunge.
You don't have to believe in ghosts, supernatural creatures, or hauntings to appreciate a good story. In fact, sometimes it's better if you don't believe. You might sleep better at night. If you do believe, well, it's easy to understand why. Saying something like the existence of ghosts is impossible without proof one way or the other is actually pretty difficult. While America hasn't been around for a long time in the grand scheme of things, that hasn't held us back in the haunted roads department. The earliest roads built to head out into a largely unexplored western frontier were, Thoughtco says, established in the 1770s. From dirt trails, Daniel Boone, and arguments with landowners to the first national government-funded highway of the early 19th century. We've come a long way, and along the way, there's been a lot of grisly tales told of murder, accidents, and souls who have just refused to move on. Is there anything to them? You'll have to check out these haunted roads for yourself. Shades of Death Road is a real, honest-to-gosh rural road in New Jersey, and Dangerous Roads adds that it runs past a place called Ghost Lake because, of course it does. Weird New Jersey says no one's quite sure how it got its grisly name, but as far as local legend is concerned, it definitely lives up to it. We'll jump right in with the pillars of fog. Locals often see raising from the old lake bed alongside the road. The fog, it's said, often comes with sightings of the dead, rumored to be the spirits of Native Americans killed by colonists and disposed of in the lake. It's also said to be haunted by the ghost of a local girl who was killed in a car accident. She still walks on dark nights when the road is once again slippery and still wears her prom dress even after all these years. It's also rumored to be the old haunt of a group of murderous squatters, so that's fun too. Even if all that sounds unlikely, there's one more tale that's a little more rooted in truth. The area around the road is extremely marshy, and starting in the 1950s, settlers began suffering from terrible outbreaks of malaria carried by the mosquitoes that infested the nearby swamps. The yearly outbreaks became a regular thing, and the cloud of death that surrounded the road was very real. This next road is located in Nebraska. The road, News Now Omaha reports, is officially called L Street. More people know it as Seven Sisters Road because of its grisly tale. The 13th florist says that the legend goes back to the early 1900s, when the area was reportedly home to a family with one son and 7 daughters. After a disagreement got heated, the son left the house to wait. When the parents left, he returned to kill each one of his sisters one by one, hanging them from 7 trees along the road. Other versions say it was a farmer who killed his 7 daughters, but either way, it all ends the same way, with 7 dead girls. Today, the road, which is just south of Nebraska City, is still said to be haunted. Anyone brave enough to drive the Seven Sisters Road at night is likely to hear their screams of terror and the moans they made as they died. And some have even seen mysterious, flickering lights or have caught a glimpse of figures in white. This next story comes to us from grunge.com.
Grunge.
When you're on set of a horror flick, it's easy to get carried away with eerie occurrences that happen. More often than not, cast and crew fall victim to unsettling events that are immediately blamed on the occult. An easy assumption to make when already swarmed with the made-up tales of the macabre. When the unexplained simply cannot be explained, it's time to dig a little deeper and accept the fact that some ghoulish foul play may be to blame. Here are some of the creepiest tales of movie set ghosts. William Friedkin's 1973 film adaptation of the best-selling novel The Exorcist has gone on to be an iconic piece of pop culture. Besides being the first horror flick to be nominated at the Academy Awards for Best Picture, it's also heralded by many as being the scariest to boot. What many people may not know, however, are the unsettling amount of freak accidents that happened before, during, and after the production of the film. Along with 9 deaths associated with the movie, actress Ellen Burstyn wrecked her back, and Jason Miller's youngest son, Jordan, was struck and nearly killed by a man on a motorbike. If you think that's bizarre, just wait. As Friedkin told Entertainment Weekly, one day at 4 in the morning, I got a call from a production manager and he said, "Don't bother coming into work this morning. The set is burning to the ground right now as we speak." Sure enough, the entire set burned to the ground after a pigeon flew into a light box and caused a short circuit. Except for one particular area, the bedroom used for the exorcism scenes. While all this is enough to make one give up the project entirely, Friedkin isn't wholly convinced of any otherworldly influences. And as Entertainment Weekly summarized, he, quote, dismisses any notions that the set was actually haunted. If a story goes by the name The Omen, you better believe it'll have some ominous tales attached to it. And the 1976 supernatural flick revolves around Damien, the son of the devil. While this may sound like spooky mumbo-jumbo, many believe that the movie set itself was cursed, with tragic events occurring after the production. According to BloodyDisgusting.com, is a website, 2 months before filming, Gregory Peck suffered his own loss. His son committed suicide. As the outlet notes, the subject matter even deals with Peck's character struggling to kill his son. Carrying on nonetheless, once production finally started, 2 separate planes that flew Peck and the movie screenwriter, David Seltzer, were both struck by lightning. Not long after, executive producer Mace Neufield's, hopefully I'm saying that right, probably not, plane was also struck by lightning. Gregory Peck canceled a flight reservation of his, only to later learn that his plane had crashed and killed everyone that was aboard. Somehow, everyone still decided it was a good idea to film a flick that quite literally gave them infinite bad omens. And on the first day of shooting, a head-on car collision would injure a lot of crew members, while 2 weeks after filming completed, the zookeeper in charge of the baboon scene at the zoo was eaten alive by a lion. Alright, so after hearing those stories, well, my first opinion on the first story is, it's kind of just a question mark. I feel like a lot of people would have the same response. I don't really have any theories, or the government did an investigation and they determined that a suitable answer is a natural force sent them off into the freezing winters on a mountain, and eventually it had caused their death. Like, one was blunt force trauma and hypothermia. If you're running from your tent in the freezing cold, you pretty much know that hypothermia is guaranteed, especially these people were experienced hikers. But yeah, so second story kind of sounds like stuff that me and a lot of my friends as kids used to do, come up with stories. I mean, maybe it might be true. Maybe these stories might be passed down from older generations that they had witnessed, or maybe it's just something that they had heard, from their parents and their grandparents, and it just has been trickling down through the generations. And the third one, like, I am a movie fan, and I guess if you're kind of portraying these characters, maybe you can conjure up some type of energy, spirits. I don't really know for sure, not for certain, but who knows? Who knows what type of areas they are in? Like on the previous podcast, I had spoke about the poltergeist. They actually use real skeletons in one of their scenes, so that kind of definitely feels kind of eerie and kind of spooky, and seems like to me that can be something that would bring about some bad juju. But without further I want to thank you so much for listening to the Just Here in the Dark podcast with me, your host Shine, on today's Weird Wednesday-ish. Have a great one. Until next time.